Hi, Blake. Let's see if I got the timing on that right. Good job. Good job, Mike.
I can speak Spanish a little.
Speaking the
Boco.
things. Wait. I have a whole, it just occurred to me I have like a butt ton of stuff running on my computer because I was doing all sorts of stuff earlier. What all can I close here? Why is Xcode open? That's a bad idea.
I don't know, Mr. Developer guy.
Yeah. I wasn't using, I don't ever use Xcode. It always freaks out whenever I go to open it because it's like not updated or anything. So, yes. Bing, bing, bing. You still hear me?
I can.
You got quiet all of a sudden. Oh, you're typing Spanish. That's what you're doing. Got it. I got it now. I follow what's happening. Oh. Bought a chainsaw last week. Super exciting.
Nice.
I was talking about that on stream on Wednesday, but yes.
I think I'm excited that I don't need a chainsaw.
It's one of those things like I feel like I probably shouldn't need this, but I'm really glad that I know how to use one and it's super fun.
Well, you can always use it to defend yourself from the bats that
I
try to
know
take over.
that thing. So what I didn't realize, I just forwarded you. Okay. So for those of you live and watching this in retro, I sent Mike a picture of a bat that my family found on our driveway.
Yes, you
And
did.
that picture made it look ginormous. Like from the picture, I thought the wingspan on this thing was like 1.5 feet or more.
It looked like Dracula.
It was like the entire wingspan of it completely spread out was like 4 inches. Like, I mean, we're talking small. It was a very, very tiny bat. And it looked huge in that picture. So anyway, just
But it was still a bat just hanging out outside your
it
house,
was. It
which
was trying to get into the sun because it was, still kind of frozen from winter. So it's trying to warm
uh,
up so it could fly.
so it could feast on rotting flesh.
It did not bite me, so there's no ramifications there.
So not a vampire. Good.
Mm-mm. Nope. Not yet. That's next week. Well, any reason we shouldn't start?
Just the giant image of a bat I have in my brain.
Those are fun. You like giant bats.
I don't know about that. Don't know about that. Hey, you got your book.
I do
Nice.
have my book.
I got mine this time.
Yeah? You don't ever have your
Right
physical
there.
book with you.
Oh, I always have my physical book with me,
Oh.
except when I record.
Well, that's what I mean.
I know that's what you meant, but it's not
Well,
what it sounded like.
good job. Hey,
I have to clarify. I
huh.
just wrote a Twitter thread about how I always have a physical book with me, and then you said you never have your book with you.
When we
So-
record, but yes. Yep. Oh, Blake, by the way, the book we're covering today is Things That Matter by Joshua Becker. In case you were wondering. He was asking a couple, or yesterday, it's like, what book are you covering tomorrow for Bookworm? It's like, you got to show up and find out. So I didn't tell anybody.
Nice job. What book should I pick after this one?
A good one. Actually, you should pick a really bad one.
I don't know.
You don't know if you
think
should
I'll-
pick a bad one?
I think I'll pass on the bad one.
been a lot of good ones coming out lately.
Ooh, the updated Irrefutable Laws of Leadership will be here by May 31st. When does this? Okay, so the next one would be. Okay.
Would be okay. It's an interesting.
No,
book
sorry,
cover.
I'm thinking out loud. I have an advanced copy of Building a Second Brain
Okay.
by Tiago Forte.
Yep.
And I think that would make a great conversation. But that one publishes June 12th, I think. So that wouldn't be available for this one unless I could get him to send you one too.
Let's see. 1, 2. So 2 weeks we would cover the Susan Cain book,
Yep.
and then it would be the 16th is when we would record it.
Yeah, so probably
And it's
give
the
you like
9th.
3 days to read it.
When does it come out? The 13th?
I think it's the 12th. It's on Amazon as a pre-order.
Okay.
Look it up quick. Building a Second Brain. Becker's an interesting guy.
Yes, that he is.
June 14th. Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Be
We'll do
2
that
days.
after. It's no big deal.
That'd be really close for me. I could
Yeah,
get real
don't worry
close to
about
getting
it.
that done.
Nah, it's okay. We can do it a couple weeks after. You can pick it the one after that if you want. Otherwise, we can just wait. No big deal. I've got some interesting ones. Yeah, don't we all, Blake? We all need a second brain.
Well, here's a different way to come at this. I don't know if you want to do this. It comes out on the 14th. We're recording on the 16th per normal schedule. Do you want to change that date?
Nah, it's okay. It'd be too much of a turn. It'd be too stressful a turnaround probably for the editor.
Just saying. Like if we did it, even if we did it Friday afternoon.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't think it's a big deal. We can do it a little bit after it comes out. That's a big topic. It's not going away.
Okay.
How do you feel about the Enneagram?
I haven't formally taken the test, but I've looked through like all the things, and I'm like 95% certain of the one that I is, and
Okay.
my wife is super into it right now. So
you're not morally opposed to it or anything?
No,
Good.
not at all.
I know what we're doing.
Oh no. When you're that confident, usually it doesn't go well for me. I don't know why. Why is that? When you're really confident about something, Joe like gets extra tasks or something along those lines.
Extra tasks on the road to enlightenment.
Oh, that's what it is, huh? Okay.
Yep. Oh, I don't want bold. Come on now. Paste is plain text. Right. Just drop this in here so I don't forget. Okay. Now I think we can make a podcast. Let me save this just in case. Okay. You got anything you want to plug at the beginning of the real show?
Plug, no. There was something though that I was going to talk to you about.
What is it?
I don't remember. It's gone. I even told myself, oh, I should go write that down. And then I think somebody asked me
Turns
where a
out-
cable should go, and it's gone now.
Turns out, yes, you should.
I don't know. It's gone.
Okay. Well, you're just gonna have to roll with me asking you ridiculous questions when we start. Then.
I'm used to that. Okay.
Ready to push buttons?
Ah, sure. Why not?
Okay. 3, 2, 1, click. So I saw you had a stream the other day, Joe, about note making
Mm-hmm.
and sense making. And do your notes make sense? The whole world wants to know.
I don't know. They make sense to me, but I'm the one that made them. So there's that. I don't know that I got into sense making, though you would probably argue they're one and the same. And
Yeah, I did not get a chance to attend your your live stream.
It's all
But
right.
I saw the Twitter thread come across as like, help me make sense of all this.
Yes.
So I was just wondering what the outcome was.
Yeah. It was fun. Basically, I guess if you want to plug that, I've been basically going through the process of making notes live on stream. Like I know that a lot of people show their note systems and the made notes structures that they come up with after the fact, and people love to show off their dashboards. People love to talk about like how they do, in your case, tasks and such in things like Obsidian. And but I don't really see anybody making those notes live and letting the viewership help in the process of making those, which has been a fascinating process on my part whenever we're doing that. So anyway, there's that. It's been kind of fun.
Interesting. Sounds cool.
I mean, it
Let's try and make the
sounds
next one.
cool. I don't know that it actually works out to be that way, but it's entertaining on my part. I will say that.
Fair enough. Well, good job creating consistently. I also have been creating consistently. I am on day 27 of Ship 30 for 30 as we record this. And that means that I have written and published 27 days in a row to Twitter. And I feel like I'm starting to be okay at it. Like it's starting to make sense in my brain. Twitter has always been the kind of thing where I would follow certain people and I would read it, but I did not actually create a whole lot
Sure.
on Twitter. And this writing course, cohort, whatever, has been interesting because it hasn't been exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's a digital writing course, basically. So how to write for the internet. I'm learning things like how to get someone who writes a book like The Messy Middle, which we covered by Scott Belsky, how to share your takeaways from a book like that and get the person's attention who did it and make them want to retweet it. And one of my big takeaways was like, you want people to share stuff and you want to make stuff that's good enough that they want to be associated with it on their timeline, sort of a thing. Like they're co-signing it essentially. So that was kind of cool. I had one thread yesterday, which was by far my most successful one.
Yeah.
I went from like a couple hundred views to the first things I was writing and maybe a couple of likes, no shares, anything like that, to I shared this thread on the ways that I use Obsidian and included screenshots to a lot of different use cases. And that one has blown up. Holy cow. It's like 100 times more than anything that I have ever, 100 times more engagement than I've ever gotten in anything I've written online. But it also has forced me to kind of crystallize what I want to be known for online. We're going to get into that a little bit with this book, I think. But like part of the Ship 30 class was like rewriting your Twitter bio. So it used to say, I'm a writer, podcaster, screencaster, whatever, and just links to the accounts where I did stuff. And I changed that now. So it says I talk about the intersection of faith, productivity, and technology. Follow me for, intentional technology, personal productivity. Reluctant creativity was a term I came up with. Still like an artist, right? Never really felt like I was creative. And that, I feel like all this stuff is kind of clicking into place. The puzzle pieces are coming together, and I'm starting to see kind of how I can add value to the world this way in a very small way. Because who really cares about personal productivity and intentional technology? Like on the big scheme of things, maybe that's not so important, but just trying to help where I can. Like I said, that has ties to today's book. But before we get there, we should talk about our follow-up. So did you time block for 2 more weeks?
I did.
And
I still think some people are crazy, but I don't know if I'm supposed to keep doing this at this point because maybe we got to have an intervention here at some point from your part to mine. But the thing that's still weird to me is like whenever I have multiple people that will derail that plan and then the scheme of what I've got for the rest of the week now falls out of alignment, and I've got a massive, I shouldn't say massive, I have a cascading effects problem whenever day 1 or day 2 of the week gets completely thrown off with external requests that I can't control. But I don't think I ever would have felt like that had I not time blocked it. So I can't quite figure out if that's a me thing or if that's a structure problem. I
So
suspect you're going to say it's a me
ignorance
thing.
was bliss.
Maybe. I mean, it's one of these things where, like, knowing where I intend all of the hours in a day to go is fine, and when it works, it increases the sense of accomplishment that comes with that plan or with what you've achieved for the day. But when it's broken and there's nothing you could do about it, I haven't quite figured out what to do with those scenarios, because it does make things worse on my part. So there's that.
Well, I don't want to psychoanalyze you live on air again. So,
I'm super concerned about it. Apparently, that's why I brought it up.
I do think there's probably some parallels to like one of the things they say with like the YNAB budgeting is that by creating a budget, it allows you to roll with the punches. I feel like the same argument could be made for time blocking, and it's probably just a single thing that could be overcome that's not causing that to click for you, but I don't know what it is, and people are probably sick of us talking about time blocking at this point. So
at the moment, I haven't quite figured out if I want to continue it or not. Now that said, the other thing here that hasn't been mentioned so far is that I have kind of noticed what days of the week are easily derailed, and that this happens on almost guaranteed. So, like, for example, I know that time blocking my Tuesdays is worthless. Absolutely worthless. And I say that because that's the day of the week when our staff meeting is. And it's the day of the week when, like, the entire church staff is here in the building. So the chances of getting questions or pulled aside is like 95%. So, like, I can pretty much guarantee time blocking that day is going to break and be a problem. Like, pretty much guaranteed. That and oddly enough,
you could
like
just
Friday,
go from 9 to 5 on Tuesdays. Interruptions.
Correct. Distractions, disruptions galore. Friday mornings are not far off of that, but that one's completely different. It's because there's a couple folks who are in the office but tend to wait until that moment in time to bring things up for me. And I never plan on it because I haven't fully connected that that's what's going on. So the benefit and the plus side of you inflicting the pain of time blocking on me for now, 4 weeks, a month, whatever this has been, I should go look. It's been painful. But the benefit of it is I don't think I could have connected some of those dots, that those particular patterns were happening, had I not done that time blocking. So on a holistic level, that's been helpful. So I think, if I were to continue this, which I kind of want to experiment with this at least for the next week, and not time block Tuesday or Friday mornings, but try to time block the rest of it and see how that pans out. So that's my current working theory. Not sure where the flaws are in it. I'm sure there are some, but I've not found them quite yet.
Okay. Well, you can do it if you like. I will let you off the hook for this one and stop asking you about it, though.
All right, that's fair.
I will ask you about building out a daily creative tracker, though.
Yeah, I put one in Obsidian, of course, because, everybody's supposed to be on Obsidian at this point. And
as you do.
People are... The non-Obsidian people are probably sick and tired of hearing about Obsidian from like 45,000 different podcasts that are in the tech space right now. So
I don't care. I'm going to keep talking about it.
I know, but
better get used to it.
People are probably going to get sick of this if you're not on that train. So my apologies, but here we are. Thanks, Blake. Every time we say Obsidian, Blake puts a bell in the chat. So thanks, Blake.
Hey, you're supposed to ding the real one.
It's because it's somewhere, and I keep forgetting to get it out until we're in the middle of conversation. I'll write a note down so I can grab it. There you go.
All
Note
right.
taken. So yes,
Do
I
you
have
want
a
to share the
creativity tracker.
details?
I've been working on
You
it.
you want to share the details of this, or just say that you did it?
It's rather boring, but basically, I've got the daily note thing in the notes system that will remain unnamed from here on forth by myself. And it's
Obsidian.
just got a just got a tag in there, and I just mark true or false. That's it.
Okay.
So once I do that, I can do any and all roll-ups I want with data view. So makes it super simple. So it's literally just a line item on that daily note. That's it.
All right.
That's why I say boring.
Good job. You crushed your action items. I did not.
I feel like I've had enough like bad rounds with action items and just saying like, I don't know, I didn't get to it, that I felt like I had to like actually get these done this
Okay.
time.
Well, thank you, because I kind of failed.
Hey, cool, we can switch
So,
places for once.
yeah. The one I failed at really was writing a fan letter. I did not do this one. I mentioned I specifically want to do this to somebody that I don't really know and just reach out and say, hey, your work encourages me. And unfortunately, the last couple of weeks have gotten away from me. Starting a praise file, I did do this, although I just did this
Like before we started
because
recording, did this?
this week.
Okay.
So yesterday, I presented for the Linking Your Thinking conference, and I presented on Obsidian-based personal retreats. And I got a whole bunch of really great feedback via Twitter after that presentation. I don't know, somebody there had like said, hey, go at Mike and say something nice, but that's kind of what it felt like. So with a praise file, really, I just want to start collecting those things. I guess technically people could delete those tweets if they change their mind and then they're gone, but
Sure.
I got the links, so that's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, at least you're
I-
moving on that.
Yeah, I think ideally this would include like positive reviews for books or courses or things that I have made. But I just wanted to get it rolling. So and of course that's all going to be in Obsidian thing.
Of course. Of course. Good job.
All right, should we talk about today's book?
I think so. This could get long, but I feel like we say that every other book.
It could get long anytime you and I just start talking about books, really. Today's book is Things That Matter by Joshua Becker, the third Joshua Becker book that we have covered for Bookworm. And if this one had come out first, might have been the only Joshua Becker book that we had covered for
Correct.
Bookworm. He had also written, help me remember, there was the
More of less.
original one, More of Less. Yes, that was the original book on minimalism. And then there was The Minimalist Home, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that one was basically how to apply minimalism to your living space, room by room. And I think we both liked the More of Less. We thought the Minimalist Home was a bit of a departure and weren't sure if we were continuing down that trail with Mr. Becker. And then he comes back and writes this one on mission and purpose and meaning. And obviously that's right in my wheelhouse. So that's why I picked it. It's broken into 4 parts. And I think what we'll do for the outline and the chapters here is tackle the 4 parts, although there's only 11 chapters. So we could go chapter by chapter if we want to, but they kind of fall neatly into these different categories. So part 1 is the objective and the obstacles. Part 2 is distractions of a paralyzed will. Part 3 is distractions of the lesser good. So those are the 2 different categories of distractions that he's dealing with here. And then part 4, which is almost an afterword, ending of the book, beginning of a more meaningful life. So let's start here with part one, which is the objective and the obstacles. And in here, there are a couple of chapters. Chapter one, A Life with No Regrets. Chapter two, Distracted from Meaning. This is kind of where he starts talking about the importance of focusing on the things that matter. I like this approach, perspective, whatever, right at the beginning of this. Reminded me a lot of a Gap book that I had read, which was 30 Lessons for Living. That one would be fun to cover on Bookworm too. But the basic idea of that book was that author had talked to a bunch of people in nursing homes who were just living their best life. What contributed to you living? You have no regrets, basically. How did your life end up being successful? What were the secrets, right? And so he condensed that down into, after interviewing tens of thousands of people, 30 different lessons for living. But really, the inspiration behind that book is really what Joshua Becker is getting at here at the beginning of this one, is that you don't want to get to the end of your life and wish that you had done things differently.
Yeah, this is like the setup for the rest of it. But basically, I think what he's like the foundation I feel like he's laying here is that there has to be a bigger thing than just yourself that you're working towards. I'm extrapolating here, but you have to have like this purpose and vision, I guess, to use some of those terms, like we were talking about earlier, before the other two parts, and then I guess the fourth part, before you can start to understand those distractions and what takes you away from that. Basically, you have to know what you're being pulled away from before you can talk about those pieces, and it makes perfect sense to set it up that way. But like the two of them, A Life with No Regrets, like asking folks nearing the end of life, what do you regret most? And trying to understand, like, okay, well, what was it? Like, well, I didn't do that artwork, or I didn't write that book that I wanted to write, or I didn't resolve this relationship issue. Whenever you have things like that, well, then the obvious next question is, well, if that's, if you were to die today, what would be the thing that you would wish you had done? Like, what would you regret not having done? Well, that's the thing that you need to be working on. Like, you need to make sure that that's incorporated in your life somehow. Which that question is how we got this book, by the way, because that was the answer to Joshua's. That was his response to that question: is what's the one project you wish you would have done had you, like, if you were to die today? And it was this book, and I am kind of glad he got asked that question, because there's a lot going on here. But yeah, this is where he sets that up. Is the very beginning is like, what is the goal you're shooting for?
Yeah, I had written down that question as a talking point. It was originally asked by Charlie Gilkey. And he said, if you were to die today, what one project would you be most disappointed if you weren't able to complete it? And I'm curious, Joe, what is your answer to that question?
I actually don't know, and I've thought about it quite a bit, which is kind of strange, because usually with a question like that, like, it's instant. Like, I know the answer to that immediately. This one's kind of strange because I feel like the thing that at least my wife and I have been working towards is setting ourselves up such that we could have a place in a home where we could invite other people over and teach and guide and disciple and such. But we've been doing that. Like, that's where we're sitting right now. That's been our kind of our family mission here lately, and that's been going really well. So we're kind of sitting in the middle of that project right now. And obviously that one's never done. Like, there is no completion point to that. So to have the question of, what is the thing that you like, what is the project that you would wish you had been working on? I'm not sure what that answer is. I mean, obviously I think there's probably something, but I haven't figured out what the answer to that should be. The closest I think I've come is probably something to do with my kids and engaging them and empowering them in some form. But I feel like we do a lot of that as well. So I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to this. Do you have a clean answer to this?
I do. I'm questioning it now because you brought up the kids thing, and that's a project that never really ends.
I
But
know. It's similar, right? It's just a perpetual thing.
yeah, but the thing I thought of right away was updating my book, because I wrote that book when I had no idea what I was doing. And
Yeah.
since then, I've learned a lot about writing and what a good book looks like, and feel like I could write a much better book now. And I don't ever really want to go back and touch it because it's one of those things that was the best I could do at that moment in time, and I'm sort of ashamed of it when I look at it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't want to just chuck it and start over either. So it's kind of like, well, what do I do with this thing? I I don't know, but that's the thing. Like if it were to be over as soon as we are done recording, that would be the thing that I would have regretted, is not updating that, because I feel like that theme is something that I've developed, and I've changed my thinking or grown my thinking maybe on that topic of faith-based productivity so much since then, that there is definitely another book to be written there. So that's my answer. But the larger point here, which you were kind of getting to, was like when everyone wants to live a life well lived, right? They want to make the most of all the time they've got to work with. And he talks about how minimalism is actually a support to that, because it's the intentional promotion of the things that we value most by removing the things that distract us from them. I love that definition. I like the fact that I stumbled upon that after he asked that question about what's the thing that you really want to complete, because I feel like once I had that in my mind of that book needs to be updated, then it was easy for me to think about all the things that don't line up with that. And minimalism is just removing those things that don't really add any value. There's a phrase in here I jotted down: how to get to the end of life with minimal regrets. Choose well, set aside lesser pursuits, seek meaning, and do it every day. How did you feel about that little checklist right there? Is that something that inspires you, or are you like, well, duh, but that's really vague and I don't know what to do with that?
Um, I'm usually pretty good with some vagueness around that. It was kind of motivating. It made me like, I feel like I should do this. I feel like there's a lot of things that I could get from this, but at the same time, like, okay, checklist. I could do it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot that comes with it. Like there's a lot of second order and third order baggage that's going to come along for the ride.
That's fair. Um, However, I think maybe this is one of those things that we tend to make more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fact that it's a minimalist who is speaking this to me, but I hear that and I'm like, yeah, I think it really is that simple. We just make it harder.
Yeah.
Um, and the second chapter really is all about distraction. He ends the first chapter by talking about how the enemy is distraction. And then in chapter 2, there's like 8 common distractions, and those are the foundation for the next 2 parts in the book. But on page 22 in chapter 2, he said that when distraction becomes a lifestyle, we lose control over the life we are living. But distractions don't start out a lifestyle, so they don't have to take control of your life. And I feel like there's a lot of truth if we're willing to look at our situations honestly in those couple of statements.
Yeah.
We It makes us uncomfortable maybe to think about all the distractions that we have allowed to take root in our lives, but it's also empowering to believe that we have the potential to take them back. And I like how he encourages us that, distractions are part of the deal. They've always been there. They're never going to disappear. So you just kind of got to make the jump while you still can. That phrase in particular with that story he mentioned at the end of chapter 2, that kind of stuck with me. Make the jump while you still can. I don't think that pertains for me to minimalism, but I feel that phrase is going to pop up again and again in other scenarios. I think there's some profound insight to be gained from that. You have the ability. You won't always have the ability. So you may as well do something with it while you can.
Yeah, just to put some more bones on that story there, to flesh it out. There's a trip that he went on. Was it just his wife or with all his kids? Both of their kids. They
Mm-hmm.
were on a catamaran, which is massive boat, two little pontoons looking sort of things. Anyway, they can get quite big. And at one point, the captain of the ship invited people to jump off of like the upper deck, which is up like the mast of that. It's about 25 feet into the water from that point, and he was inviting people to jump off of it. So of course, all the young kids and the young men who are trying to show off to all the ladies do this right away. And uh, Joshua was noticing there were a lot of gray hairs on the boat with them, who had no intention of doing this whatsoever, nor should they. And his wife, while he was acknowledging this in his brain, asked, "Are you going to jump?" And that's where the jump while you can, because he said yes. It's like, I still can. I'm in my mid 40s. I can still do this. He climbed up and jumped. So that's where that comes from. It's like, while you're still able, take advantage of it and make that move. Like, that's exactly what he's getting at here is like, well, you can't, make that jump when it's too late in life, but you can now. So don't wait. Like, don't sit around and wait until it's too late.
I was surprised how much that story resonated with me because I kind of knew where he was going with that from the beginning of that story. And I immediately started to disconnect because I don't do well with heights. So there is
Yeah.
absolutely no way that if I'm in that exact scenario, I'm making the jump. And I
Sure.
expected that my brain would be so attached to the literal story that he was telling me about jumping from a tall height that I would immediately discount because he's using it as a metaphor basically for the point he's trying to make regarding stopping living a life of distraction or defaults and live a life of intention instead. And instead, by the time I got done with that story, I was like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
I've been asking myself why I flipped that switch so fast. I don't know I don't know what to attribute it to other than he's a good writer.
Yeah, because this story, I don't know, there's something about this, either the way he told it, it's about a page long. That's it. Like, this is a real quick, not a long drawn out thing. But that particular story is one that I found myself rethinking throughout the rest of the book for some reason. Like, this one came up a lot, and it's the one that's kind of struck me the most throughout my reflection time on this book, which usually, like, a lot of times when we have books and they tell tons of stories, like Joshua does here, when there's a lot of stories, like, it seems to be fairly rare that one specific story I don't want to say overshadows, but it kind of hovers over top of the rest of them and continues to come up even after you're finished with the book. But this one definitely did, at least for me. I don't know if that's just something to do with approaching midlife crisis territory, or if that's, something else going on that I'm not acknowledging and it's subconscious. I don't know what that is. I need to lay on a bed and somebody ask me, how I'm feeling. Like, there's something going on there, but this one definitely resonated with me, and I continue to rethink it for sure.
All right. Well, glad it wasn't just me.
No, there was something about it. I don't know what it was.
All right. Well, let's move on to part 2, which is distractions of a paralyzed will. And 2 chapters here. Chapter 3, dreams overshadowed, and chapter 4, which is wounded. The majority of the book comes in part 3. So we don't need to spend a ton of time here, but there are some fascinating insights from these chapters. One of the things I jotted down from chapter 3 is the observation that many people would rather be miserable than uncomfortable, which, when you hear that phrase, it kind of doesn't make sense. Like, aren't you uncomfortable when you're miserable? But the point being that we would kind of default to what we know, even if that is making us overwhelmed and anxious and stressed out by having to maintain all of this stuff and all these obligations, rather than focusing on the thing that is really important. Because if we focus on the thing that is really important, then there's no excuses. There's no ability to tell ourselves a different story. We just got to wrestle with the results. So there's
Yeah.
another thing he says here, like when you do something and it fails, you can no longer hold the belief that I have the potential to do this thing. I have thought about that a lot, not just in this particular book, but I've noticed this in some people because some people I'll talk to in real life, and they kind of rub me the wrong way, and I always ask myself, like, why is that? Why am I getting annoyed when I'm talking to this person? And it's because I have zero tolerance for people who just want to talk about stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Come back and tell me about it when you've actually done something
Right.
to move in that direction. Until then, like, talk to the hand.
Yep.
Because a lot of people, and I've fallen into this myself. I was thinking back today even about some of the projects that I've taken on over the years, and lots of talking, very little action associated with them. So I'm not trying to project like I don't struggle with this as well. This is the natural human tendency, I think, especially if you're scared of putting yourself out there. If you don't have the confidence that you are able to do this thing by talking about it to other people, basically what you're able to do is get a little dopamine shot in the arm when someone says, "Hey, yeah, that's a great idea," or "I believe in you. You can totally do that." However, most of the time that doesn't translate into the action because all they're looking for is the emotional jolt. You really have to believe that this is part of who you are and why you're here, and it has to be. You got to be driven by this mission or this purpose to make this thing happen before you put yourself out there and risk something. And that is a theme throughout this whole book, and I really enjoy it. By the way, there's a bonus section at the end about finding your purpose. I did not put that on the outline because I don't really like the exercise, to be honest.
I was gonna ask your opinion on it at some point. So yeah.
But it's a great idea. I mean, I don't know where I would start with that. I just looked at his approach, and it didn't. I use the word resonate a lot lately because I've kind of gotten a different revelation of that word. So I'll try not to overuse it, but that's the best one I can come up with is like, this thing reverberates in my soul. And I'm like, aha, there is something here. That's what I mean when I say resonate. It's not that I have all the facts and yes, this makes logical sense. It's just this feels right to me. And there's a lot of things that you can actually judge more accurately by how they feel than if you were to try to collect all the data. So I really like this this whole beginning part here. Like, don't just talk about it. You got to actually do it. And the identifying the things that will cause most people not to take that first step. And then what I hope to do about that is actually do the things.
Yeah, and the bulk of the things, quote unquote, that keep us from, acting are all based around distractions and fear. In this particular case, fear being the distraction or the thing that keeps us from doing it. And I'm very uncomfortable with this particular chapter, which is well done by Mr. Becker, I would say, because this is the territory where we start getting into why are you not? Like, jump while you can, but why aren't you? Why are you not moving forward? Why are you not actually, taking that step? And there's an awful lot of it that comes down to the fear component and acknowledging what it is that you're afraid of. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, you can be afraid of the success that comes with it or afraid of being good at something, which is just so backwards in my mind. But that happens and people do it a lot. And when you start trying to break down those fears, like that gets uncomfortable real quick. Like real quick. And I'm not thrilled with Mr. Becker's prodding into territory I don't want to go into.
So he forces you to deal with being uncomfortable. Back to that first point, many people would rather be miserable than uncomfortable. And so I could see this being the point where a lot of people just put this book down and they don't want to deal with it. But I actually think this is the exact right approach to take. The layout of this book is spot on, talking about how what you really want is to live a life of meaning. The reason we don't live a life of meaning is that we get distracted. We need to make the jump while we can, like you said. And there's two reasons why you don't. And fear is the one talked about in chapter 3 here. But then chapter 4 talks about being wounded. So something happened in the past. This is sort of related. You're afraid that you're going to get hurt again. But again, there's some really powerful insights here. Like, all of us are influenced in some way by troubles in our past, and he does a great job of articulating that not all of these hurts and traumas are equal. And I really, we'll get into this more in style and rating, but I feel like he does a really effective job of saying, like, this is my small trauma, and it's not false humility, but it's also like very effective in communicating. I know people have had way worse experiences, but this is the one I know, and this is what it did. And then you can totally apply that to your own situation very easily. It's very generalizable. But in chapter 4, he talks about how, regardless of the size of the trauma, what a lot of us will tend to do is wait for things to be perfect, wait for everything to line up. And he says, if we wait to be healthy, perfect, and prepared, we will never accomplish anything. So essentially, you need to do something before you think you are ready. And I endorse that belief.
Yeah. The whole wait until it's perfect before you act thing, that's me to a T. Like, that's absolutely where I get hamstrung, because I don't want to build the garden fence until the soil is just right. Well, if I do that and I wait, well, that means the window that I have to actually get the job done is now like 2 days, 2 or 3 days. But it's like 4 or 5 days worth of work. But that's the cognitive dissonance that comes in that scenario, like that specific one. Like, that happens a lot, where I think I'm going to wait until a certain thing is ready, but the conditions under which I'm going to wait for actually don't add up. But you don't always connect those dots unless you're able to take a step back and start to process it. That's what he's encouraging you to do, is kind of take the step back and work through it. But I always want to wait until it's just right, because there could be a better way to do it. And if I just do it now, it's going to be harder than what it has to be. And I don't want to deal with it being more difficult than I need to deal with. Like, that's the difficult thing that comes with that. I can think of so many things that kind of makes my brain hurt. The things I've put off because of this sort of thing. I should have read this one a long time ago, apparently.
Well, I tend to struggle with that as well. And it's kind of embarrassing to think about, because like the ship 30 for 30 stuff has gotten me back into a consistent writing habit again. But I had created a consistent writing habit when I self-published my book in the first place, and that's the thing that kickstarted all of the stuff that I do online. So there's obviously a lot of great fruit that has come from that decision and that habit. But still, if you would have asked me a couple months ago, hey, should you be writing every day? I'd be like, yeah, I should. But I'd always have an excuse for not doing it.
Right.
Putting money on the line by signing up for this course and committing myself to do it, the forcing function, that was the thing that got it going again. So if you are looking for those excuses, I think you will always be able to find them, because nothing is ever going to be perfect. And I have definitely succumbed to that myself. Another thing he says in this chapter 4, which I really liked, is great leaders run towards problems. I don't like dealing with problems on one hand, but on the other hand, I like solving problems. But you can't solve the problems unless you deal with the problems.
Correct.
So I definitely want to be a better leader. I want to be a better father. I want to lead the people and the teams and the organizations and the companies that I'm involved with. I want to do right by them and help them do more and be more. So I have that as like the overarching theme is leadership is important to me. I want to be a better leader. Okay, well, what's a better leader do? he slaps me in the face with this. He says, they run towards the problems. Okay, I guess you're right. I got to run towards the problems then.
Yes, but I don't want to. But that's the thing. Like whenever I've worked under really good leaders or really good bosses in the past, like that's always been the thing that they do. Like they hunt for the issues, like the biggest issues, and it. I say that knowing that the specific situations that they would take off and attack and go towards were actually like systemic issues that I didn't even realize were a thing. Like it was just more of a I'm doing my day to day, I'm doing all of the work I'm being asked to do, but the way that it's communicated had nothing to do with what they were after. They were actually after, systemic issues like why are the sales reps even needing to ask for this data? They're not even he wasn't worried about, how to get the data to them in the right format. He's like, why do you need this at all? Like he was asking much better questions and then going after that problem instead of just getting the team to solve the problem on the behalf of the sales reps. That's a whole story in itself that I'm not telling. But but that's the hard part with it. Whenever I think about the teams that I lead, am I going after the systemic problems that they face? In most cases, I would probably say no. So I'm not leading them very well if you want to apply it in that sense. But I don't know. There's always something more. But it's easy to be afraid of running towards problems. I don't want to do it.
Well, yeah, I don't want to do it either. And I've been thinking about this and brewing on this with the challenge to this is what leaders do, right? And I think if you were to talk to me individually, so take leading people out of the equation, I would 100% say that who you are becoming is more important than what you are doing, or basically don't focus on the output. Had an interesting conversation the other day about the productivity space and the anti-productivity movement, for lack of a better term. The people who are pushing back against the just do more and crank and make, like, again, focusing on the output. I'm able to do all of these things. Well, why do you want to do all those things in the first place, right? So that's at the very heart of this whole book, Things That Matter. But that phrase, like who you are becoming is more important than what you are doing, that has been sticking out to me. And if that's true of an individual, then it's also true that a leader would assume that responsibility for the people that they are leading. And it's not just about getting the job done or completing the project or the task. It's about how you do it. And it's about the character that's developed in the process. And that's kind of messing me up. Because everybody
Sure.
tends to focus on like just get the thing done,
Yep.
right? I tend to be the person that people call on when they just need something done. And they know that I have the ability to just get it done. But I'm recognizing more and more that just getting it done oftentimes causes a lot more harm than good. And so I've been wrestling through that. How do you still make things happen with a team or an organization without crushing people, basically, in a way that they are pulled towards this picture that you're selling? Because I really believe like sales orientation or sales ability, that is part of leadership. No one's going to follow a leader unless they convince the people that are following them that they can help them get where they want to go. So how do I pull people in a way that they are motivated as opposed to trying to push them from behind? And the metaphor I have in my head of this is like a piece of string or a piece of rope. You can pull a rope in a direction, but you really can't push it. It's
No.
not going anywhere if you're
No.
trying to push it. And I think that people are like that too sometimes.
Yeah, I was pulling a coax cable 3 hours ago before we recorded here, and Joel, my assistant, was helping me with that, and at one point he was like trying to push the cable down into the pipe that we were trying to pull it through. And there's a reason that people talk about pulling cable. You don't push cable into the ceilings. You don't push cable through all the pipes and stuff. It's definitely pull it through, which is why we have pull strings. It's why we have everything is referred to as pulling. You cannot push it. Not really related,
Yep.
but fun nonetheless.
But that needs to apply to yourself before you can apply it to other people, which is really the whole idea of this book. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but that's just where my brain went
Yeah.
as I was thinking about this. Should we move on to part 3?
This is where there's a lot of fun stuff that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, so part 2 is basically the internal stuff, and part 3 is, I guess it's not really external stuff, but it's definitely a shift from maybe past to present. There's several chapters here. Chapter 5 is the me monster. Chapter 6, enough is enough. Chapter 7, litter on the road to purpose. Chapter 8, trending. Chapter 9, beaches get boring. Chapter 10, blinking lights. We could probably do an entire podcast episode just on that last chapter, but we'll get to that maybe in a little bit.
I feel like we've done podcast episodes on that chapter.
Yeah, well, digital minimalism for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentions Cal Newport, but
Yeah, you
let's
can't
talk about the meme.
skip him.
Yeah, let's talk about the me monster though. This is the one that I grabbed my only action item from the entire book in.
Okay.
The sum up this chapter is basically we don't need help being selfish. However, the most direct path to happiness involves looking at the interests and needs of others. So, really effective reframing of this, I think, because if you were to ask people, you want to be happy, they'd say, yeah. Joshua Becker says, pursue purpose, not happiness. When you pursue purpose, then the happiness kind of comes along for the ride. Some great statistics in here and quotes some research studies. There was one from on The Science of Generosity by Summer Allen from UC Berkeley, which showed that wealth tends to make people less generous and more isolated. And essentially, we should serve somebody. And the action item that's associated with this for me is towards the end, he asked this question in one of the stories that he was telling. How does this action benefit someone else? And it was a minor point. It wasn't a big like, hey, you should do this. Like he flat out says about 100 times you should do a digital detox. So he's not like trying to drive this point home. But this just jumped off the page at me. The things that I do, and specifically the things that I create, because I'm trying to establish new creative rhythms with the newsletter, the YouTube channel, all that stuff. These things that I believe are going to align, but I don't really know yet. Just trying to get some movement with them, right? So I don't want to just do this to do this, and I don't want to do YouTube because I feel like everyone needs a YouTube channel who's trying to do what I'm trying to do, right? I want to do it in a way where I'm actually helping people in some small way. Like I said earlier, I kind of wrestle with that because like intentional technology use on some scales, you could look at that and be like, well, how is that really making the world a better place? But for some people, it could totally change their world. It's kind of the whole idea behind this book. Like if it's the right thing at the right time, it can absolutely change somebody's life. So how do I create content then in all of these different forms, whether they be podcasts, videos, articles, newsletters, that has the potential to benefit someone else, not just something that I feel like writing or I feel like making. And obviously there's got to be a Venn diagram where those things overlap, right? Because if you don't enjoy the thing that you're making, you're not going to keep making it. You have to be motivated to do that. But just that simple question, I want to start asking myself that about the stuff that I'm publishing. I don't want to just create stuff to create stuff and add more noise to the universe. I want to try to help specific people and kind of niching down and figuring out like what do I want to be known for has helped with that. Uh, I still got some work to do there, but I feel like this is one of the things that I can use to kind of measure if I'm on the right track.
Yeah, this is something that I know. Well, I was kind of talking about this earlier. It's like, so when my wife and I bought our current house and the 5 acres that come with it, one of the core purposes we had for the purchase of this property, which to get that done was one of the biggest undertakings I think I've had in my life to get that actually accomplished. The main goal was to set up a place that could be a retreat for other people and to help teach people a variety of things. Some of those are, day-to-day skills. Some of them are mental skills, but also to be like a respite place for folks. So, like that's ultimately what we're doing. But it's fascinating how the things that we do day to day look identical to folks who buy properties like ours for their own use that don't apply to other people. But when it's all said and done, like I know that some people, and he talks about like materialism and stuff in here too. I think maybe we'll get there, but I know that there are a lot of folks who do that sort of thing, and it's almost like a show off scenario, or it's like a look what I have, or look at the things I do. And yes, they may love doing those, but there's always like an ulterior motive. I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying that that's kind of the cliche, I guess. Is
I
your
think it's a lot more people than you realize.
I
There's a
I
saying, most
know, but
people
I
buy
know.
things most people buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't like.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. And I know that that's common, but it is so much more fulfilling what we've been doing. Like I get really excited when I know there's a bunch of people coming over, which as an introvert is like the worst thing ever. To have a whole bunch of people come over and then stay there for 4 hours or 5 hours. It's like, like deep breath. We'll be okay. It'll be all right. I'll be able to sit and read a book tomorrow morning. It'll be okay. Like,
You can go hang outside with the bats.
yes, go hang out with the bats outside. Go pet some kittens and walk the trails in the woods later. Like, we'll do this and it'll be okay. Like that's what the introvert in me wants to scream, but and I'm saying this knowing that like here chapter 5 the me monster, like this is the antithesis to that, right? Like if you're going to focus on yourself and what makes you happy and focus on being happy, you get the opposite, not happy. And by trying to turn it to focus on other people, that's the key. So I feel like that's a point that he makes here that I kind of wish was bigger, but at the same time he made the point and he has a lot of ground to cover, so he can't sit there and camp out. There's entire books around that. So that said, like I really enjoyed this part, that particular chapter especially.
You probably enjoyed the next chapter too, which is
Yeah.
enough is enough, because it kind of talks about how well, at the end of the chapter anyways, he talks about generosity, which that part really stood out to me. I guess most of this next chapter is talking about how you can't out earn a desire for money, and money is amoral and stuff like that. But the thing that impacted me is that the people we admire the most are generous. I think I shared not too long ago. I had heard that just recently, and kind of put that to the test in my mental checklist of the people that I looked up to and that I considered to be successful. I was like, that can't be right, because the other version I'd heard was like everybody who is successful in life is generous. I'm like, there's got to be some jerk outlier there. And there probably is. I don't know him though. As I went through all of the people that I could identify who fit that criteria for me that I actually knew, I'm like, yeah, these are generous people, and they're not concerned about hoarding, and they're not concerned about themselves. Um, I guess you can look at it a couple different ways. You could say, well, they have the ability to do that because they've achieved this certain level. But everybody that I've talked to this way. They strike me as this is who they are, and it feels authentic. It doesn't feel like this was something that changed once they got to a certain point. Some of them I know the whole story, and I know that this is who they were before they became quote unquote successful. Um, but I think there is maybe not 100% success rate with this. That you could argue that, but absolutely, this is the general principle that the world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. So think bigger, live bigger, give bigger. Not looking to make yourself comfortable, because again, the biggest thing that's going to move the needle in terms of your happiness is serving somebody else.
Yeah, that and the focus of this particular chapter is like on money. But keep in mind that the amount of money you need to achieve happiness, quote unquote, uh, lack of quotes if you want to go off of what we were just talking about. But if you look at the amount of money it actually takes to do that, it's actually quite small for what you would think. And he had a whole survey and study that he did as part of this book, and there were questions around that he asked people in this survey. He was asking them like, how likely would you be to be happier if you had just a little more money? Like, and people were all over the place on that one. Like, they were all over it. Like, they said, if I had just a little bit more money, I'd be happier. And it reminded me of, Rockefeller's attributed quote. I don't know how true it is, but he was theoretically asked, how much money would be enough money for you, and he said $1 more. Like, sure, there's always
Yeah.
more to be achieved. I don't know if that actually happened or not. I've never been able to fully confirm if that happened, but that's the story and how it goes. Enough is never enough. If you're always looking at those numbers as the thing that tells you when you're done. So I don't know. People do it a lot, but you shouldn't. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Let's see. Chapter 7, Litter on the Road to Purpose. This stuff I like from all these chapters, but one of the things I did want to talk to you about and bring up is that everyone is minimizing something. I never thought of it that way. I had phrased it previously, everyone is optimizing for something. So optimizing is basically, what do you want to maximize in your life? But minimizing would be focusing on what things do you want to eliminate from your life. I don't think that one of those directions is necessarily better than the other, but I think this is a pretty profound truth if you've never thought about this before, is you do get to optimize your life for whatever sort of situation you want to create. And we do this without thinking about it. So I'll just use optimizing as an example, because going back to that quote that many people would rather be miserable than uncomfortable. Well, what they're doing is they're optimizing for safety, maybe, or
Sure.
optimizing for comfort, right? So that's could be said of the whole section on money. If you're trying to get a whole bunch of money, you're optimizing for comfort, or optimizing for leaving a big inheritance to your kids. Like, you can define for yourself what is important, and then your choices either move you closer to that or further away from that. The point being, whether you view it through the minimizing or optimizing lens, is that you should consider the choices that you are making and the life that you are creating, because they have ramifications across the board. And he mentions that if you're not minimizing your possessions, what you are minimizing is your money, time, and potential. I 100% agree with that statement. Everything that you own requires maintenance, requires attention, and that's less that you have for other things. There is a zero-sum game when it comes to your resources, whether that be your money or your time or your attention. And this I feel is moving from chapter 6 is about money, but this is kind of about time and attention. But they both are currencies that you use in your life. And if you think about it, really money represents the portion of your life that you gave to get it, right? So essentially, money represents time and attention. You go to a job, you get a paycheck for the hours that you put in, right? You're trading that portion of your life for the the paycheck so you can pay your bills and feed your family and all that kind of stuff. And we tend not to think of it that way. And when you think about possessions, go back to the previous chapter, I really want this thing, seems like a good deal. Are you willing to trade a portion of your life in order to acquire that thing? And then this chapter is more focusing on the perspective stuff. It's not the individual things like don't waste it, but really just, okay, let's get everything moving towards the things that really matter here.
Yeah, I guess this one, chapter 7, I found it to be more like on the like materialism train, like buying things, which I feel like he needs a chapter like that in here. Like this is this is kind of what his whole
It is who he is.
online presence has been. So I know that he absolutely needs this chapter in here, but it's what you would expect, I guess, in that sense, in that he's referring to how like if you have a lot of time that you've put into earning money that then goes into buying things that take up your time, like this is a perpetual circle that you're creating that you may not even realize that you're creating. And it's not from this chapter, but there's a section where he talks about the cost of a free puppy. Like a free puppy isn't free. Like it doesn't work that way, right? And Becky and I talk about this sort of thing fairly often when we give gifts, especially around Christmas time, of course. But like being very careful with giving gifts that don't then require later purchases or create the need for someone to maintain in some form. And it surprises me how often, like how difficult that is sometimes. Like if you think through, like if I give someone something simple like a gardening trowel, like that seems pretty minor, but the assumption is that you're going to spend time using that in a garden, right? If this is a person who gardens all of the time, it's a great gift. Like you could easily be somebody's favorite if you give that gift to a gardener. But give it to somebody who isn't gardening at all, but has talked about it, and now you're encouraging that habit, which maybe that's what you want to do, but you're encouraging them to spend time and potentially more money on building out said garden, which again, maybe that's what you want them to do or you think that they should do. But I mean, that's a very simple one, but I mean, you can easily start picking out things that lead to issues and costs that you don't necessarily want to put on someone else. So from a gift giver stance, you have to think about that, but you also have to think about it when you're buying things for yourselves. Like what are the extras that are going to come with this that I'm not planning on, because it can get big real fast. So you gotta watch it.
Yeah, and kind of driving that whole thing is the desire for more, and he talks about the health benefits of contentment in this chapter. Reduces stress, improves your outlook, relaxes your body, makes life more enjoyable. I like this question again at the end. I didn't write an action item for this one, probably because I have pondered this for quite a while with my whole concept of a life theme. But does this promote purpose? The life theme is something I came up in the faith-based productivity course that I put together, and really it is just finding your purpose and condensing it down to a single statement, starting with your core values, figuring out what's important to you. That's probably why I didn't like his approach. Is I tried it myself and figured out what worked for me.
Yeah.
But just the TLDR version here, my life theme is to help people answer the question, why am I here, by inspiring, encouraging, and teaching them to connect to their calling, discover their destiny, live the life they were created for. And everything that I do has to align with that. If it doesn't align with that, I'm not motivated to do it. So I might do it for a very short period of time, but most likely I'm going to not do that very long because I feel like that is a waste of my time. It is not in alignment with my life theme. It's not in alignment with my purpose. When you can align your work with your purpose, though, then it's exciting and it pulls, it doesn't push, right? So I don't know. There's a whole big rabbit trail there, but I really do like the way that he frames this and kind of gets you thinking about why am I here and why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Are they really in alignment with the greater good that I'm trying to accomplish here? The next chapter is trending, and this one I I wrestled with a little bit because this is kind of about social media, and there's a lot of negative things that you can say about social media. I'm also in the middle of a course which is requiring me to write daily on social media. So this is right thing, right time for me. And there was one specific section about 2 questions to ask about your social media use. And that is, why am I attracting followers and how am I attracting followers? That I spent some time thinking about that. I read that part kind of the same time I was wrestling through in the Ship 30 course, talking about redoing your Twitter bio and like, what is the person who is considering following you? What are they going to get from you? Because it's not about you. Most people, myself included, list, well, I do this and I do this and I do that. And who cares? Right? If I'm going to engage with you, what am I going to get in return? And I feel that this chapter kind of helped me get to the point where I am motivated to create the things that I'm creating in service of helping other people. And it doesn't have to be something that I have earned a credential for. That's another thing they talk about in Ship 30. And a big roadblock for a lot of people is like, well, who am I to talk about X? Well, if you've learned anything, then you have something that you can teach. ConvertKit talks about teach everything that you know, right? Because there's always going to be somebody who's not as far along on their journey as you are. And I feel like this chapter kind of fit together nicely with all that other stuff that I was thinking about in terms of like Ship 30 is talking about how do you get this attention? And by asking those 2 simple questions as I'm going through this, it helped me solidify why I would want to do that in the first place. Those 2 things combined have created an insane amount of motivation for me. I am working more hours, which this is kind of getting into the next chapter, beaches get boring, but I am putting in more effort, but it is more exciting and I feel that pull instead of the push when it comes to this stuff. And that is exactly what he's trying to infuse in people, is not where you dread engaging with this and you just try to make it through and you hope that you have enough. It's that when you connect to that purpose and you have that mission driving you in the things that you do, that brings the motivation because you know that this is what I'm here for.
There's a quote at the beginning of this chapter, this overcoming the distraction of applause, trending in chapter 8. It's by Jim Carrey, and I think this is interesting because I feel like I've seen people shoot for this many times. But this is the quote: "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of, so they can see that it's not the answer."
Yeah,
I was like, huh, interesting. Talk to any like middle schooler, maybe even high schooler, maybe not high school, middle schooler for sure. And if you ask them, you know, what would you love to be when you grow up? It's like, I want to be a YouTube star. Like that's almost universal. It seems like I want to be I want to be big creator, online influencer. Like these are the things that people absolutely want to be and aspire to. And I think it's something to do with this, like wanting to be that person that people look up to and that people go to. But The trouble with it is that like there's a lot that comes with that you may not even realize. Sure, it'd be great to be rich and famous, right? But there's privacy stuff you've got to now worry about. What do you share online? What do you not share online? People are going to hunt you down
Hmm.
your address and be able to send you things whether you want to or not, or show up at your front door whether you want them or not. Like this stuff happens. Are you sure you want that? And there's a lot of extras that are going to come along for the ride. Are you sure? Because once you're there, guess what? There's no going back. Like you can't go backwards on that. So be sure if that's the route you want to go. No guarantees you'll get there, but if that's what you're shooting for, just be aware that there is a negative side that can come with that. Now he's not focusing on that particular part here at all, but he does have a quote here. What page is this? 133. You don't need praise or attention to have value.
Hmm.
That one struck me because it's very easy. You were talking earlier about the stats on your Twitter thread. Like I feel like as creators, like it's easy to gravitate towards those numbers, and like you feel
Vanity
like you're
metrics. Yep.
you feel like you're getting somewhere whenever you see those metrics go up. But it can have the opposite side as well. Like when they don't go up, like when you get used to them going up and then they don't, or they go backwards, you start to question what you're doing. And am I doing the right thing? Did I not say that the right way? Maybe that wasn't clickbaity enough. Like all of these things start to come into your mind. So you really got to be careful with it, I find. So just being aware that like the praise and attention doesn't necessarily mean that you're not valuable. It's just different, I guess. So don't make that your focal point. That's my focus for you.
Yeah, that's the shadow side, and definitely those are purely vanity metrics that people can just look at in order to make themselves feel good. But it really comes down to the motivation. And I feel like in this book specifically, Joshua does a great job of making sure that this is grounded in how do I serve somebody else? And you don't need to have 10,000 followers in order to make an impact. That's kind of the thing here is regardless of how viral something goes or doesn't, what is the thing that you can do which is going to make the most impact? You do not need to be an influencer to have influence. You can influence somebody. There is somebody who looks up to you and you can help them, whether that happens to be online or not. I guess for me, because I do a lot of stuff online, what I am recognizing is I have this platform. It's not as big as a lot of people, and it doesn't matter. I will grow it if I can. I'm not going to be upset if I don't, but I am going to make things that I want to make that are going to help people. I think maybe I mentioned it here. Maybe it was a different podcast. I forget. But there was uh an essay by Derek Sivers that kind of rocked my world when I came across it about balance. And I will put a link in the show notes here when I get a chance to grab it. But uh, Derek Sivers ends up a lot of his books mentioning like contrary advice, even just like here's an essay on this, here's an essay on that. If it resonates with you, use it. If it doesn't, move on to the next one, sort of a thing. But this one really impacted me about how you should have a job that takes care of your bills, and then you should have your art, and you should not have the pressure for your art to be the thing that pays the bills for you. And when you decouple those, what happens is you are free now to make whatever it is that you want to make. What I've recognized is that people who make things for a living, your income is tied to the algorithms and it's tied to the SEO. And so you have to stack the keywords and you have to do all the things. Yep, that's the one. So I I guess what I'm saying is I enjoy not having that be the driver. And I feel what that allows me to do is focus on the impact that something can have, not to my bank account, but to the people that I would be creating this for in the first place. Because, like I said, I want to not just add to the noise. I want to create, not consume, but not just so that I have an output. Really, I'm inspired by this book to leave the world a better place.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially online, there's so much emphasis on the negative and the jerks that are out there. I'll shine the light wherever I can. I'll be a good guy.
Yeah. That's the hard part with this is like, okay, if you want to build a following online, you know, why? And you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been building some systems behind the scenes to make this easier for myself. And by that I mean like not just sticking with like one platform, but how do I post once and let it go a whole bunch of places so that that reach can grow in many ways. That's ultimately what I've been working on, and I'm really close on that one. Anyway, side note, but I find that trying to determine like, okay, well, what is it that I'm wanting to share? Like, I know that from a day-to-day stance, but holistically, what is the answer to that question? And I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, it's real easy to come up with like, hey, look how I'm using Obsidian today. Like, these are things that are easy to come up with, but why, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, because I know like you just did a thread on Obsidian and such, which was great, and I think it does help people in a lot of different ways. But if that fits into the overarching, and I say this knowing that it does fit for you, so this isn't a dig on you, but I know that people are sharing things like what you did, not because it fits with the overarching what they want to do and what they want to share and learn about online, but because anything that involves Obsidian gets clicks right now. Like that's why some people are sharing that. Now I know that that's not your reason, but that's what a lot of people are doing right now, and that part frustrates me when people just jump on the bandwagon for the sake of the clicks. Like that's the hard part.
I understand that. I guess it comes down to what do you want to be known for? And if you don't know what you want to be known for, then you end up chasing whatever happens to be popular. But when you figure out what you want to be known for, it becomes immediately obvious whether something is on brand or off. So, like I said, I'm still kind of just going through this.
Yeah.
In Ship 30, they use the example of somebody that I've talked to for the Focus podcast, Jesse Anderson, who is the ADHD productivity guy.
Yep.
And they used him as a case study because I guess he went through that, and he was sharing that well, this is what I'm thinking about, but this is too niche. And they're like, no, that is perfect. And you can see how he's totally leaned into that. Everything that he shares is about ADHD and productivity. And again, this is based on their presentation. Maybe Jesse would say this is a wrong characterization, but it sounds like he wasn't sure that that was going to be the thing. That was just one thing when he was going through the reps and writing. And then from that point, he kind of like that kind of clicked. For me, it's the intersection of faith, productivity, and technology. So when we talk about Obsidian, like my inspiration for sharing that is not, well, Obsidian is how to better get something out there.
Right.
It's I see people who are slaves to their devices, which we'll maybe get to in chapter 10 here.
Yeah.
And they just consume things and they never think about the relationship they have with these things. And there's so many positive things that the technology can enable, but it doesn't happen by default. You have to control the interaction. You have to have a purpose when you go into it. So I'm just going to share a bunch of positive purposes and maybe people will like this. And holy cow, people liked it.
Yes. But I think that's the right way to do it. And I think that's probably the better way to do it for sure. I'm just saying like people can jump on the trains, and they do it for honestly the money and the traction, which some people want to be known for that, I guess.
I guess. Can we talk about leisure?
Do we have to? I'm never retiring. That's what I know.
That's what Joshua Becker advocates for. And if you just take that snippet, you probably think this guy is crazy. But this chapter 9 is really great. He talks about how modern society is infatuated with leisure, but leisure doesn't provide meaning. It can provide renewal, but the goal is not to avoid work. He's kind of saying work because you want to. The goal of work isn't more rest. The goal of rest is better work, is what he says on page 151. And so this has been challenging to me because the most meaningful and fulfilled life you can live is going to include hard work. Anything that is worth doing is going to be difficult, right? So you can't, if you want to live a fulfilled life based on things that matter, I would say it is safe to say you cannot optimize for comfort. So what do you optimize for then? And what does your work relationship look like? Because a lot of people view work as a necessary evil. They go punch the clock 9 to 5 and they live for the weekends. Joshua does a great job of kind of saying it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I know that like I come from a farm, and if you have farm blood in you at all, the concept of retirement is nonsense. Like nobody does that. I know of exactly 0 farmers that I've met, even in my agricultural career, which was hundreds, if not thousands. None of them ever had a retirement plan. Like it was just work till I die, let the kids do it again. Like that's the plan. Like that is it. So
Mhm.
I have that blood and I know that. So the concept of retiring is non-existent. Now I may just change paths at some time, but retiring won't be a thing. I as far as like leisure goes, like I tend to be of the mindset that if I want to sit around, let's play into Joe's world right now. If I want to sit around a campfire and drink a glass of wine or have whiskey with guys or something like that, if I want to do that, I'm not going to do that all day long. Like that's going to drive me nuts. But if I do it after a day of cutting wood or building gardens or planting gardens, like after a full day of maybe I'm at church doing work, like after a full day of that 1 or 2 hours of leisure at the end of the day is significantly more fulfilling and more restful than if I'd been doing it all day long for weeks on end. Like it's way better. So
Yep.
it cannot be the end game, I don't think, because it's just not. I don't know. It's not truly fulfilling. I think it's depressing, honestly, when I think about it. So I'm not doing that. Yeah, don't do that.
I guess what I've been toying with and bouncing around in my brain is just our relationship and how we view our work. Because your work doesn't have to burn you out. And I don't know. I guess I'm kind of torn as to what is the ideal number of hours for somebody to work. I think there's a lot of evidence that says after 40 hours you get diminishing returns. But I also think that especially now there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of different things. And so maybe you don't have a single 40-hour a week job. Maybe you have a bunch of different things that all contribute. And what's the division of labor look like for that kind of stuff? I'm in a kind of weird position because I took a different job in January. I'm no longer full time with the Blanc Media team, and creating was my job for a long time. That is what I got paid for. The minute that I didn't have to do it for money, it completely changed the relationship with the process. You could argue that I was viewing my work wrong and it didn't have to be that way. And I don't think it was ever like a sludge. It was always something that I really enjoyed doing it, and I really enjoyed the people that I got to do it with. But it's different. It is absolutely different now. And I think we're in a spot where the messy middle would call it free radicals. People don't have, or they at least have the ability to not work mix of things that are going.
Well, we'll see if he comes
That
back. There you are.
sorry,
Oh,
I was gonna
you're
keep
right.
going. All right, so edit point here, Toby. uh, I have found since I took this other position that I put in more hours, but the creative work is actually restorative. So like the podcasts and things that I do on the side, like I'm still putting in the hours at the quote unquote day job in addition to this. Um, and maybe that's a bad example because I was doing this in addition to stuff I was doing at Blanc Media too, but it's a very different type of work. I get to go manage people and systems over here, and then I get to go make stuff over here.
Right. Right.
And that mode switch is energizing. So I've been thinking about like, well, what is sustainable for me with all of the things that are on my plate, plus all the responsibilities at church ministries we're involved with. I have all these things that we do as a family, the weekly one-on-ones, stuff like that. What is the right mix? And I find that anytime I find every time I look at a formula that somebody else uses, I'm like, ew,
Yeah.
that's it doesn't feel right. You have to figure, and so I'm having to figure this out for myself. And I think it's kind of cool that we have the opportunities now by working remote and using the technology strategically to kind of piece together what our work life looks like. I think you probably done this in some way, shape, or form too with the stuff that you do at your church. Like there was no blueprint for this. You just kind of figured it out and you're like, yeah, this is the thing. And everyone needs to find that for themselves. But this whole chapter about beaches get boring, like the big takeaway from this is don't work so that you don't have to someday. Enjoy the process. Don't chase the goal of eventually I'm going to retire. Just learn to love what you do. And if you don't love what you do, figure out what you can do to improve your own situation or find a better situation. Because if you develop a growth mindset, you continue to work on yourself harder than you work on your job, as Jim Rohn would say. You will have the ability to say, this is how I want to work.
Yeah, for sure. I just know that I can't sit for very long. Even when I'm on vacation, it's like I want to like climb a mountain. Like I can't just sit still. So I will always be that way, I'm sure.
Sure. All right, we can, I think, skip chapter 10, the blinking lights.
Yeah,
The short version
definitely.
of this is do a digital detox. We spend a lot of time consuming. The average adult spends 12 hours, 21 minutes per day, according to Nielsen Total Audience Report 2020. That's kind of crazy. So just think about your relationship with your technology. I would also add, go watch The Social Dilemma. It's a great documentary.
It'll
We've
scare you
watched
out of
it.
social media.
It will. We've watched it with our two oldest, who are 14 and 12. And they want nothing to do with social media. I've
Good.
had to kind of come back the other way and be like, well, it's not all bad. You can like use it strategically. I use it every day,
Yes.
but I'm doing it this way, so
Yeah.
definitely stay away from Facebook or Meta or whatever it's called this week.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is exact. I mean, when you have a book that talks about overcoming distraction, like the tagline on this, overcoming distraction to pursue a more meaningful life, like the very first thing that jumps into your head, I'm betting, involves technology. Like that's when people say distraction,
Yep.
technology is usually right there very quickly behind it. And he covers it in this chapter. It's a long chapter, compared to a lot of the others. So there is that, but it's we've talked about this before. Like
Yep.
the stuff can get in the way. Don't let it get in the way. Try to keep it under control. When you realize it's gotten out of control, do a detox again
Yep.
and keep moving forward. Like that's really the moral of the story, I think.
Agreed. All right, so the last part here is part 4, ending of the book, beginning of a more meaningful life. Yes, that is the name of the section. Yes, that is a terrible name for a section.
Yes.
So, Joshua Becker, have your people call my people. What this should have been called was the next chapter. Essentially, where do we go from here? Right? But that title is just long and clumsy, and I don't like it. I like the idea of what he's saying here. There's one chapter in this section, Live the Story You Want Told. That's a great title. And it kind of ends with it's more about the journey than it is the destination. And I absolutely love that phrase. It's more about who you're becoming than it is about achieving a specific goal. Habits over goals. Goals are dumb, all that kind of stuff. And that I think is like a great way to end it. It's framing it as like just do the next thing that's going to help you live a more intentional, meaningful life. Don't try to just blow up everything and get rid of your phone and leave social media and move to a farm with the bats like the Buligs. Like just figure out the next step in terms of optimizing for the type of life that you want.
I think this goes all the way back to one of the early chapters where we were talking about people just don't move, like they don't act, they don't take the next step. This is coming full circle and saying, "Hey, do that." Like that first step, that thing that we were talking about early on. Now you know all the things that are keeping you from taking it. Now you should take it. That's really what this is. And I love that he wrapped it, put a bow on it, and said, "Here you go." He did a really good job with it. So yes, there's not much more to say on it, I don't think, but yeah, I like that it came full circle on it.
Yeah, there's some other cool stuff in here that I'm gonna chew on for a little bit. Like there's a story that he shares, and somebody uses this phrase, "Leave every room a little bit better than you found it." I really like that. I want people to be sad that I'm leaving.
Yeah, yeah,
And he says that some people may not like your originality, but others will admire it. So again, like be brave, do your thing. Don't base your value or your worth on other people's opinions. Very important for anybody who does anything online. um, so yeah, it's a great summary to this very good book. Anything else you want to say about this?
no, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, let's go into action items then. I have a single action item. How does this action benefit somebody else? Kind of already talked about this. I just want to shine the spotlight on why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and not have it be about me. Uh, Again, the world of the generous gets larger and larger. I want to default to generosity, to borrow another ConvertKit core value. They really crushed it with those core values, by the
They
way.
did.
What about you?
I had two, so both from early chapters. One, we talked about it slightly, but the concept of today I commit myself to. I want to try this for a while. Like I've got these morning questions that I do. I want to slip that in as kind of a core component of that, and maybe drop a few of the others that I'm in the middle of. So I want to apply that one. Also, he kind of said this in passing. I'm kind of surprised it didn't come up so far and that you didn't write it down, because this is something you should have written down, Mike. He mentions reading books from previous centuries. You remember this?
I did see that. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how I would apply this, but I think it's a really smart move. So I don't know that this is something I'm going to do near term, but I want to just kind of keep that in the back of my mind whenever I'm selecting books for either myself, maybe not necessarily for Bookworm, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in that concept. So it's one that I want to try to apply here and there. So yeah, I've got those two.
Nice. All right. Style and rating. My book, so I guess I go first, but I need to capture the
Yes.
time code first.
Ready, go.
Hope we edit that part out.
You need a button. You have a Stream Deck.
I really enjoyed this book. I knew that I would, based on the subject matter. And just from the very beginning, starting with that question by Charlie Gilkey, like knowing that this was exactly what I thought it was, Joshua Becker's life work. Uh, this did not disappoint. I feel like it's really well written. It's really well organized. We kind of talked about the structure, the objectives and the obstacles. He's talking about everyone wants to live a life with no regrets. Why don't we do that? Because we're distracted. What are we distracted by? Breaks it into a couple different categories. Those are the two, part 2 and part 3. Ends it with a great call to action, a poorly titled call to action in part 4, but we're on the same page though, Joshua. Live a life on purpose. Be intentional with how you're going to spend the rest of your precious moments here on this earth. And I don't know. I can't say enough good things about it. I think everyone should read this. You may have hesitation because Joshua Becker used to be a pastor and there is some religious language, I guess, but I don't think it's part of his story, but he's not using it, like he's explaining how he uses it to form his own values and inform his own decisions. But it's not like this is what you should do. It's like if you are a person of faith, this is something you should consider. It's very aspirational actually for me and how I want to live my faith online, because that's one of the things that's kept me, I think, from leaning into the whole idea of faith-based productivity is I want to be authentic. I don't want to come across as telling people this is what you need to do. That being said, like if you share your story, people can't argue with it. So I feel he did that very, very well here. Even if you don't have a religious background, which again, like applying that to me, it's inspiring to me because that's the spiritual why behind all the productivity things. A lot of the productivity books we read talk about finding your why. Well, if you've got a spiritual why, that's like the strongest why you can have in my opinion. He doesn't lean into that a whole lot with this. It's just more so like you really should find out what it is that is important to you, and you should eliminate the things that aren't in alignment with that. So I feel it's very generalizable. It is very easy to read. There's a lot of great stories. We didn't talk about many of them after that first one. The only chapter in this entire thing which felt kind of out of place was only because we had read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, the blinking lights. That is, a one chapter summary of digital minimalism, and he didn't do as good a job as Cal there, but that's to be expected. It's one small piece of his message instead of the whole thing. So I'm gonna rate it at 4.5. I would absolutely recommend this to just about everybody, and I feel that the topic that the book addresses is something that we need more noise around. I use noise, just not like signal versus noise. We need more people talking about this sort of thing in the age that we live in, with the default to distraction, with the goals of the companies that are controlling the technologies that we use every single day not being in alignment with our own. We have to recognize that, and we have to fight to take it back. And just shining a light on what is it that's important to you is a big first step in that. There's obviously more you can do, but I feel like this is written in a way that it's very approachable for just about anybody. And whether you've been thinking about this for a long time, like I have, or you are considering this for the very first time, there is a lot to be gleaned from this book. So those are my thoughts. 4.5 stars.
I know that like when I first picked this up, I kind of thought, based on the cover, the tagline on it, overcoming distraction to pursue a more meaningful life. Like whenever I started putting all these pieces together, it didn't really add up to me that Joshua Becker was taking on the topic of technology, because that was where I thought I was going with this. And I would suspect that a lot of people assume that as well. I will tell you, it's an unfounded expectation whenever you pick this up, in a very good way. In that, if you go through these chapters that we've covered, the parts that we've discussed, you'll know that there's one small piece of this whole book that goes into that. He does reference it from other places, but it's definitely not the purpose behind the entirety. And I have to say that this was kind of a breath of fresh air to me, because when we think about distraction, like my tendency is I think of my focus and what I'm looking at any given time, and that's what he's referring to. But the attention can easily be swayed slightly off course by more than just technology. And he focuses on a lot of things that can do that. And that was something that I feel like more people need to discuss. I think, we don't need to increase the noise around this type of thing, Mike, but we need to turn up the volume maybe on what is
That's
there.
a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. I think if we crank it up a bit on this topic, I think we're in much better shape. Joshua Becker obviously has been writing for quite a while. He has a great style. There's so many stories here. The catamaran jumping thing is definitely going to stick with me for quite some time, especially now that I've talked about it here on the show like I have. But I find that this particular book, I'm fairly certain is going to come back many, many, many times, and it's going to resonate for quite a while, to use your word. But I know that this is something that a lot of people could benefit from. I absolutely love this book. I think it's a 5.0. I really do. I think it's something that I may actually reread here in the near future, which I can't say I've taken on very often. Whenever I've got a book that I really like, and I don't generally reread them very soon after. But I may do that with this one, because I feel like there's some stuff that I need to work through, because there's some difficult topics here that covering it in a week to 2 weeks, it just doesn't give you the time to sit with it, and glossing over it and moving on to the next one, which this is one of the downsides of the way that we do Bookworm. Whenever you have a book like this and you feel like you want to spend some time with it, you really don't, because you're moving on to the next one so fast because of the schedule that we keep. So if you have one that you're like, whoa, I need to stop and think through that, and that could make big changes. Like, no, it's easy for me to just slip past it, not process it, and just move on to the next one, because I got to keep moving. Like that's kind of the potential downside of what we're doing. But that doesn't happen too often. So that's why I say I may bring this one out again here in the near future. But anyway, all that to say, absolutely recommend it. I feel like you should pick it up. I'm going to put it at 5.0. I do think it's something that you should read for sure. Okay, there you go. I'm done.
All right. Let's put things that matter on the shelf. What's next, Joe?
Bittersweet by Susan Cain. We're going to talk about hard stuff, Mike. Difficult life scenarios that could also be good. Thus the term bittersweet. Susan Cain is the author behind Quiet, which we covered a long time ago now. And that was all about introverts and how we need more of their voice. And yet she has this book, Bittersweet. So I don't know. I think it'll be good. It'll be a challenge, I think. We'll see if there's, flesh wounds that get opened up in this process. But it'll be good. And then what are we doing after that, Mike?
I have to admit, I really enjoyed Quiet. I'm not looking forward to this one.
All right.
All right. Well, I had one queued up, but I'm going to change it based on what you just told me about you wanting to brew on this topic some more. So
oh, boy.
Brew on this topic some more.
Thanks, Mike. What are we doing?
We are going to read Hero on a Mission by Donald Miller. Are you familiar with this book?
Yep.
So Donald Miller is an interesting guy.
He's a polarizing guy.
Yeah, I guess. He started off, his first book was Blue Lake Jazz, which was a religious book. And then he went into marketing with StoryBrand. And I actually think he did a great job with the StoryBrand framework. And he's got like marketing made simple, business made simple. I'm familiar with all that stuff. I've gone through the video courses and things. Like he's done a really good job with it. So Hero on a Mission is basically taking the hero's journey and applying it to your own individual purpose. I feel like this could be great. It could be awful. Either way, it's going to be a really fun conversation.
All right. All right. I'm game. I'm game.
Yeah. So since we're not going to do Joshua's exercise at the end of this book, we will go through Donald Miller's.
All right. That's fair. That's fair.
Got any Gap books?
I've been kind of taking my time with this one. I actually, took a little longer than I intended on it just because I feel like it was such a good one. So I didn't get to one this past time around, but I'm about to pick between 2 or 3 for this upcoming week. So I know I'll have one next time around. So no, I don't.
Right.
You?
I do not. It has been a challenge to write every day for the last 27 days, but I only got 3 more days to go.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time to do that.
It does, and it's been great, but I am kind of figuring out what sort of cadence I want to do regularly going forward. It's definitely not going to be publishing every single day. So I will have a little bit more time, I believe, in the near future. Did not have time to complete a Gap book here for this episode, though. All right, so thank you to everybody who supports the show. Thank you specifically to the Bookworm Club Premium members who are willing to pay to support our work. We don't have ads. That's literally the only thing that keeps the lights on. So we really appreciate the people who are willing to pay $5 a month, $50 a year. You can go to bookworm.fm/membership to sign up. And if you do sign up, in addition to our undying gratitude, you get some mind maps for the books that I've read. Another Twitter thread I did recently is how I take notes on books that I read.
Yep.
But I create these mind map files in MindNote, and then I upload the MindNote files and the PDF files to the Bookworm Club, so you can have them for reference, or you can download the MindNote files themselves and edit them if you want. There's also a Bookworm 4K wallpaper that I created and some Gap Book episodes that Joe recorded. But the big reason to do it is that you want to help us support our work, pay for the servers, help us buy some of the books. So we really appreciate people who are willing to put their money there and support us financially.
We love you guys. You're awesome. That said, if you are one of the amazing people who reads along with us, I know that's a challenge to do sometimes, pick up Bittersweet by Susan Cain, and we'll cover that one with you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Did it.
Do you ever get really afraid that whenever you're in the process of trying to save a recording that you're about to hit the delete button and just lose it all?
Yep.
It's like one of the things that I feel like I want to set up so where I can just hit a button so that it does it all the right way, so I don't accidentally hit the wrong thing. Glenn, I don't know if you're still around, but if you're near me and you want to get rid of those other 3 blueberry bushes, I will gladly take them.
Oh, when do you want to record next? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
All right. You heard it here first, people. 2 weeks.
Make sure. Stop doing things.
Yeah, Stephen, the reason that my lighting is better is that the software we use to record this does not recognize my webcam. So I'm using the Black Magic. Otherwise, you would have the other one. I did get the Opal C1, which is the pre-order one. It's a 4K webcam. It is actually really good. It does not look quite as nice as the Black Magic, but I would prefer to use this angle Well, I guess this is YouTube, so that works.
YouTubes.
But strictly for YouTube. Hey, by the way, we're over 1,000 subscribers.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't catch that.
1.05K subscribers for Bookworm.
Huh.
So congrats. Let's have a party.
Congrats. I wonder if... Now I got to double check. That's like when you can do the ads on the recordings and stuff. But we got to have the watch count stuff add up for that. Bookworm recording June 2nd at 2 p.m. Is that right?
June 2nd. Sounds right. Yeah, that is
Cool.
right.
Awesome. Got it.
Memorial Week. Well, the week of Memorial Day, whatever.
Memorial Week. Memorial Day. Monetizing. You like my lighting, Steven? Is that what you guys were talking about?
It's because you guys get the good angle, I get the bad angle.
It's true. Mike deals with the FaceTime cam off my computer over here, so I'm not even looking at him like the entire time.
You do have nice lighting in the YouTube one, though.
It's pretty simple. One right over the camera, and then one that's back on the corner over here. So that's why you can see this. So then that's actually something you should look at if you ever wanted to. Backlighting off a corner is actually more helpful than you think because it like adds the lines here, so it makes you set off from the background.
The backlight? Yep.
So anyway, that's all the video stuff I do at church. I've had to spend many, probably hundreds of hours setting the lights. It's obscene. Yes. Okay. Anything else, Mike? Before we
I don't think so.
splitted? Okay. Thanks for sticking around, Steven.
Good.
Glenn, if you catch this in post, I want your blueberry bushes. And we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.